Good morning, LinkedIn. Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, YouTube. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Ignite Leadership Series. I'm thrilled to be here for episode number, gosh, I wish I'd checked. Episode number, I think we're on something like 16. So fabulous that we're still getting a great turnout. We've got some fantastic people coming on board. Let me know if you are there, just so that I don't feel like I'm talking to myself. That would be amazing. I've just lost you off. There we go. So yeah, let me know if you're there. I just coming on a little bit early so that I give people time to find the link and get on live with us before I bring our wonderful guest speaker in. I've got the link happening here, so just bear with me. Okay, fantastic. So do let me know if you're there. Any comments, any questions that you come up with today, would love to hear from you. We'll come back to that. So just to start off with, why do I do this? So I do this because I am lucky enough to have worked with amazing leaders and amazing upcoming leaders over the past 20 years. And I absolutely love some of the conversations I have with them, some of the lessons that I hear they've learned along their journey. And I've always wanted to find a way to bring these great leadership stories and these great leadership mentors to other people in the marketplace. What I see this as is kind of mentors mentoring mentors, because there's a lot of great people with a lot of great knowledge and experience, but everybody has something different to offer and something different to share. So I'm so grateful for the wonderful people who agree to come on here and be my guest. And I'm so grateful for the people who come here and take time out and kind of invest in themselves by spending half an hour getting involved with this conversation. So thank you. The thing is that leadership is lonely. So I think, a lot of us would attest to the fact that sometimes as a leader, you feel a little bit like you're on your own. So creating this now community that I'm going to create beyond these conversations the program I'm creating around mentors, mentoring mentors in the IT industry is really exciting. So it's going to give people the opportunity to connect and give people the opportunity to get to mentors that they may not have otherwise done. If you're interested in the program, I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but there will be information coming out very soon. You can ping me now and get in as an early bird, and we'll share more information with you on this. Next week, we should be just about ready to hit the go live on this program, so we'll have everything ready to go by then. What would I like from you today? I would love that you, I said before, comment, like, share with friends if there's people that you think could be interested in the conversation. But most importantly, let us know you're there. Ask us any questions that you might have. And become part of the conversation. So these conversations are for you, and I love to get your input and to hear what you have to say. And even if you've got comments or insights on the topics that we're talking about, that would be fantastic. So all of that said, I am going to bring the wonderful Scott McKinnel from Tenable into our stream now, and I will introduce him once we can see him on the screen. So just bear with me. There we go. Hi, Scott. How are you? Can you hear me?
Good. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, we've got a little delay. Sorry, I'm thinking, gosh, he can't hear me. Excellent. Have we got a delay? Can you hear me? Are we all good? I think we have a delay. I will go on to just introduce Scott first. So originally Scott's from New Zealand and has had nearly 30 years, sorry to show your age, in the information technology industry. And for the past 20 years, Scott has held various senior management roles the majority leading Australia and New Zealand operations in some of the world's largest and most innovative cybersecurity software vendors. So it's a pretty exciting time in the software space. So I'm sure Scott can talk to us a little bit about the journey there. Having spent 20 years running businesses across Asia Pacific, Scott knows what genuinely drives sustainable growth across markets, customers, business partners, and most importantly, employees, which is the reason I invited him on here today. Throughout his tenure in leadership, Scott advocates the core values of integrity, diversity, innovation, and growth. Lots of my favorites. And he has been the recipient of numerous global team awards and twice made the BRW top 50 great places to work, which is a huge accolade in my mind. I think that's fantastic. So Scott has featured in various mainstream IT publications, TV interviews. It's a bit of a rock star, really. And Scott mentors young executives and has been invited as a guest speaker to postgraduate business classes. So he's done a lot of mentoring in the past and still does. Scott has a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Physics from the University of Otago and an MBA in Technology Management from La Trobe. And he's also started a master's in business law at Sydney University. So welcome again. That was a big intro.
Well, it made me sound much better than I am, but there you go, when you get it compressed.
There you go. I was going to say no pressure now, just to be amazing. So lovely to have you here. And the first question, I suppose, I've got for you is, so you've done 30 years in the industry, 20 years in leadership. How did that transition into leadership happen for you?
By accident. I was fortunate enough to be tapped by an old manager of mine that I worked for in New Zealand, and I was just walking down the street one day and she bumped into me. I came back from the UK and I had these plans, like, a lot of us do, to go to the UK back in the 90s. That was the done thing. And she offered me a job in Australia. So, massive uptick in remuneration. When you're a young person, that's a real primary driver. So pretended to think about it for a day, which really the decision was made in about 3 minutes. And then I came over and there were a couple of things. So I was in Vendorland, I was in a new country, I was in a new role and so on and such forth with quite a large remit. And then it turned out that she had eyes on the prize for running an Asia Pacific operation, wasn't afforded that. And then and I'd only been in the country, I think, 3 or 4 months. So she sort of emotionally checked out. And so here we were, and there was a handful of us working in this vendor, sort of just trying to find our feet, get by. And it turned out that, they needed a manager. I was liking what I was doing. I was really a little bit reluctant, but I didn't really want anyone else managing me, to be honest. And so I just put my hand forward because it seemed the right thing to do. And they gave me the job, which was quite amazing, really. So I was 29 and then totally inexperienced and everything. So different time back then. This is circa 99, 2000. That wouldn't happen now.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of young leaders in the marketplace now, though, maybe self-professed leaders, but there's plenty of younger people coming through. And so you had a lot going on for you at that time. How did you manage what was your mindset at the time?
I think, you're a little bit risk adverse. Maybe my frontal lobe had developed. I was post 27, but, you're bulletproof and you don't know what you don't know, which is actually not necessarily a bad thing because, I noticed as I've got older, you become way more risk adverse. There's a lot more to lose. When you're younger, there's not a lot to lose. So, you do apply principle. You have lots of energy, lots of common sense. You're probably naive around politics in the world. So you just forge on ahead doing what you believe is the right thing, oblivious to whether or not it is or isn't, and you do enough of them and you get by. I got by. Yeah. And I was very fortunate. I had some really high caliber employees that I inherited and got to hire. and they didn't make it. They made it very easy for it. A lot of them now are some of my best friends going back, all that time again. So
amazing. Yeah. The heady days of technology back then, wasn't it? And exciting.
Pre.com crash and Sarbanes-Oxley and all that other stuff. So yes, a different world.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, the different phases. And so that leads me to a question around, you hear a lot of people say that it's great to surround yourself with people who are better than you, or surround yourself with, talented individuals. What's your take on that as a leader? Sorry, I'm just turning my sound off.
100% true. A lot of people have heard, A players hire A players and B hire C, and they're insecure, and you're never going to get ahead if you are trying to hire people that you think you're better than them. That's just a zero-sum game. It's a spiral death right there. Yeah. So, I try and hire really competent people better than me, because if you treat them with respect, they're going to take a workload off you. They're light touch. They just need to be inspired, set them an agenda or outcomes that you want, and get out of their way and support them. 80% of the battle's done. You get good people on the bus. I seriously believe that's 80% of the battle right there. That's the bit you really can't control. So.
Yeah. And so there's getting the right people on the bus, and then there's getting the right people in the seats, right seats.
That's right. You get them on the bus, and then you got to get them in the right seats. That's right.
Yeah. And so have you ever found that you've had to sort of shuffle things, you've put people in wrong roles, but some people just move people straight out. Other people actually look at the business and will go, okay, well, they're the right culture fit for us. So where can I move them? How can I optimize their strengths?
You're 100% right. And I've had an experience of that. Usually when I've inherited a team, and you have a look at their competencies and what they've been asked to do, and that they've got a good attitude and they're smart, and someone's just put them in a role, or often they've put their hand up for a role without probably having the support. And, I could cite, not numerous, it doesn't happen that much, but certainly where I've moved people from the back seat to the front seat, or left-hand side to the right-hand side, and at least giving them a sporting chance. So, and often that's just the case.
Yeah. And I think, that talking to a point I made before about the culture and having the culture fit right, how important has that been to you as a leader through your career, and how do you identify the right people? And I'm guessing different businesses you've worked for, you've had slightly different cultures. So how do you identify the right people from that perspective?
Yeah, I think the first one is understanding, I'll call a job or your business the vehicle that you have. And it's very difficult if you've got a corporate culture that permeates down into a local operation, or it's at an extent where it's, really large, and it is what it is. And so the first thing is just understand I'll call it the persona of the organization that you're working in. And don't put too many square pegs in round holes. And there's a balance though, like sometimes, and certainly this is true, not of this role, but the last two where, I was, taken on board to try and, fix a business, as it were. And, in some instances you can modify the personnel around it and try and get them to embrace the culture, because it was just such a behemoth, you're never going to change it. And then in some instances, it's agile enough that you can switch up some people and then make a cultural change. But changing a culture is a very, very long-term and sometimes impossible task. So it's about matching people to the organisation, and not putting, there are people I have not hired or promoted, or, on face value, it looks like I've, stalled their career advancement, or however you want to frame it. But it's like, it's just not going to work for them. I just know that it's just not going to work for them. So don't put them in there and have them frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really challenging. I do say that a lot of the time, one of my favorite lines is that people join cultures and they leave leaders. So sometimes you've kind of got to create a little bit of a subculture, I suppose, for want of a better description.
Yeah.
In the business, in order to, because people come to me and say, what's the culture of blah like, and I always say to them, who are you going to be working for? Because I think that you can temper the culture even if it is challenging at times.
Yeah, we're fortunate, I guess. I have almost exclusively worked for multinationals my entire career. And because we're the backwater, coming from New Zealand, it's the backwater on the backwater. So you're out of mind, out of sight. You're the perfect size. You kind of can get a little bit of attention at sort of 3 to 5% global revenues, but you're not the UK or Germany getting unwanted attention. So to your point, you can arbitrage a head office environment and create your own subculture, but also understanding and explaining to people, here's what we can control and change, and here's what I will try and do. But here's just some stuff. It is what it is, and we just need to accept it and move on. And there you go. I was very fortunate. It reminded me of something. I worked for Checkpoint, as you know, two tours of duty for a long time. Very strong head office Israeli culture, which I found challenging to start with. And then I was fortunate enough to have, and there's a lesson in this, the CEO the founder CEO chairman suggested I should hire a group development manager, Israeli, to come to a sales organization in ANZ, because his wife was doing a PhD. And I said, yeah, no, it's okay. I've got someone. Again, a lesson in that you don't usually get those options to say no. And anyway, so 2 weeks later, I find him on my watch, as it were. So little bit weird to start with. And then after a while, he actually lasted 7 years. We worked together for 7 years. And he went from a sales engineering, quite a technical capacity. He was running my sales engineering operation by the end of it. And it was sort of a symbiotic thing. I helped him develop some empathy to the field organisation, and conversely, he helped me deal with head office. He was like my cultural attaché. We were like cultural attachés for each other, and it ended up being, one of those life lessons that you would never choose to do that to yourself. But having done it, I can absolutely advocate. If you ever have the opportunity to have someone with a completely different perspective, look for where they might add some benefit or diversity in terms of thinking to your operation.
Absolutely. And that's a whole other conversation. I am just going to break for a second and acknowledge the people who are sending us messages. So hi, Philip. Okay. Hi, Nick, and hi, Jonathan. Thank you for joining. There are three of my past guests who are all on the live today. So I'd like to just welcome them and love you to add anything to the conversation if you feel like it. But they're all just acknowledging how much they're loving the conversation. So I just thought I'd share that with you because you can't see from there.
You could be lying, you see. They could be saying, where'd you get this guy from?
And Oprah Winfrey just logged in and no, so I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge them. There's a couple of things you've said that just leading me to sort of other things, but one you just mentioned around diversity. I think I'm big on diversity. It creates more scope for innovation. Almost there's you having the different people and the different styles in the business and looking. If you've got the fundamental alignment to culture, it doesn't mean everybody has to be the same. So that's one of the great things, I think, of setting a great culture and bringing the right people in who've got the fundamental values that align, but are really diverse and different in their thinking or in their backgrounds and so forth. So have you? I know you said to me the other day that you had built some fairly interesting teams in terms of shape and size and age and all of those things. So it's something I'd love you to comment on.
Yeah, so I know that when you did the preamble and I talk about diversity and integrity and things, I actually almost cringe because it sounds like I have a KPI to meet or something. And it is a bit sad that that's kind of where it's gone, particularly in institutional accounts. And I may have mentioned before, I always get concerned the more that people kind of espouse it, the more I think they've got a problem. But that's just a viewpoint. Yeah. But, I can, so first of all, there's grounded in science. So, I was that way, I guess, fortunately having a psychology degree, rat stats and things of that nature, you're fairly evidence-based. And so it always pointed that way. And it's a good thing to do. And, I would go back probably 15 years ago, in an organization. And I had, quite an eclectic group of individuals, and I went about doing HBDI, the Human Brain indexing, and getting everyone off the same page. And you can have diversity, but you need to understand that everyone is diverse. So you stop groupthink, like all the evidence there. You stop groupthink, you get different perspectives. You can always form collaboration, and I've never found having diverse groups brings conflict. I find actually it's never been a concern of mine, provided that you explain to everybody that they need to take a different viewpoint and you have them off the same common page. So I'd be saying that if you don't at least get a common understanding about tolerance and diversity, then maybe you've got a bit of a mixed bag. That could be a challenge, but I've jumped on that pretty quick. I mean, I turned around and one organisation, as I said, and it wasn't by design, and it wasn't a big team, probably 30, 40 people, had 16 different nationalities, and all sorts of folk from different race, religion, and creed, males, females, 18-year-old through to 62, and everything in between. And we all got on like a house on fire. It was really good because everyone helps everyone. So I know I'm banging on about it a bit. I just thought it would be just common sense, and I've been really surprised how much it's been front and centre in contemporary business management, where I've been very fortunate both as an employee and having the opportunity just to roll like that.
Yeah,
I think that was a long-winded answer, wasn't it?
Great answer, and I think I completely agree with you. And I think the thing, to your point, that it's a shame that we've got to the point where we have to put things in place, and there has to be KPIs and numbers around diversity. I think, I'd love to know your view on it, but finding the balance is challenging, and in some situations it has been a necessary evil in terms of having to have that there, but it can counter building the right culture as well. If you in certain,
I think it's a shame when it's imposed, and it's disingenuous to the people that are there. So I could cite some things. I don't want to go into political and rat holes, but when they've had doing counter correction for certain bias and everything, you've got people that have got there on merit, but there's also a quota. And so sometimes and you've got to do it, because sometimes you've got to force issues, but it does do it, whether it's a gender diversity or an ethnicity diversity, that you're trying to get the numbers up. There's people there on their own merits, and then they've always questioned, and I've seen it before. They're questioned about whether they're there to make up the numbers for the diversity tick box, or whether and that's where I can see it coming unhinged. I'm sort of unapologetic. I go, best person will win, but I do try and have a look for my own unconscious bias and compensate as best I can for it. But at the end of the day, best person wins. And I do try and sprinkle a bit of diversity, because pragmatically you do want to have it to stop groupthink. So as I said, I don't find it difficult to be slightly towards forcing it within boundaries.
Yeah.
But I don't impose it upon my people. That's what they need to do. So
yeah. And
makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now I've got a little bit of a curly question, and that is, so in the situation where you've got people who are doubting themselves, perhaps in a situation because of the quotas or whatever it may be, and this goes to a question that I think it's Jonathan has asked. He said, what advice do you give those folks who were obviously in the wrong seat on the bus, and what advice do you give to people who are second guessing themselves as to their position on the bus? So it's kind of two questions wrapped into one for you.
It's a tricky one. I'll try and frame it of my understanding it. You have like an A player who's sitting in the wrong seat for whatever reason. I think first thing I try and do is acknowledge they've probably got some anxiety or something, acknowledge it, like simply going, hey, how's it going for you? Take them to a neutral environment, have a chat. How do you think it's going? Are you comfortable? And really try and build that rapport, so they feel comfortable to tell you about their concerns and things. I mean, that's a black art in of itself, and fraught with disaster if it goes wrong. But I don't see an alternative. Otherwise, you're never going to get to the person. And then really do ask them about what are your aspirations? Where do, not the cliche, where do you want to be in 3 years, but, hey, how's this working for you? Do you feel anxious? Like, start acknowledging them at an emotional level. If you had a magic wand, you could change it. What would you like to be doing? So try and not have them start from a position of where they are and where they think they, the options are, but actually try and make them feel safe, which is the first thing, and really describe, if you had the ideal job, what would that look like? Where would we use your skills? And then say, hey, look, we can work towards that, and then just build a bit of comfort. But now, hey, we're here now. Let's make the best of it. Here's some shortcoments, and then just have a dialogue. And you don't know how it's going to play out. So that's typically how I've dealt with that.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges. Well, for many leaders, it's a big challenge, is having those direct conversations. And I think, I think you're fairly good at it, and like you say, fairly pragmatic about it. So I've got more questions coming through. So Cheryl Woods, I'm not sure if you know Cheryl. Cheryl is an ex-leader from Telstra, and she's saying, great conversation on diversity and balance. Are you seeing companies stepping back in the pandemic, lowering risk, going internal, and not looking at so much to the diversity inclusion piece? Have you noticed anything around that?
I can speak for our organisation. We've amped it up. So we're a very, it's all through our DNA. I mean, if you ever look at Tenable, and we're Rainbow Nation where we are. So no, we haven't changed. In fact, we just had our sales kick off, and we had a psychologist come, and then people from diverse backgrounds. So credit to our particularly our leaders. They've just pushed on. They've been really good like that. Outwardly, I guess because I'm a little bit of lockdown like everybody, it's really hard to get a pulse on where other people's are on that. So it's really hard. I would say anecdotally, I'd say it's not front and center like it used to be, to the same extent. I think it just people have got different mental health is probably front and center now. I would say.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think from what Cheryl, my response is very similar in terms of I haven't really looked into it in detail, but I do. There's still certainly a lot of conversations going on around it, and from a mental health perspective, obviously there's sometimes a different scenarios going on when it comes to that work from home and having to manage the kids, and also some of the environments that people find themselves in, because not everybody's in a perfect environment for working from home. So I think that has definitely, there's diversity and inclusion issues come out of that. But like Scott said, I think the focus is very much on the how do you run a workforce from this new place and so forth. I've got a couple more questions here. I think one I'm just comment by Nick Varikios, who I take it you do know.
Oh, Nick, is he going to throw me a curveball? Is he?
No, he says Scott has the brain the size of a planet, and a gift to execute on the practical with ease. So he's giving you a great compliment. Share with us how you make this translation when leading people. I trust Nick to ask a question like that.
He's asked a really awkward question. I'm going to answer that in a really different sort of way. When you're working with people, I've found that you want to spend time building a whole pile of rapport with them and understand them as a person, and then keep things simple. There you go. That's kind of now, and I'll give you the answer behind the answer. I've seen I worked for a guy that was an ex-McKinsey consultant, all the smartest guys in the room, who were intellectual bullies, would bamboozle people and do things and make them feel really unconfident. I can hold my own intellectually, but you shouldn't use that as leverage on people. What you do is you make people feel safe, you give them a fair hearing, and then you just keep everything very simple, not out of patronizing, but just so they know what's important, and then guide them that way. That's probably perhaps not answering the question directly, but Nick asked me a curveball, so he gets a curveball back.
I actually think you did answer the question. I think that was a beautiful answer to the question. I think, we've got to connect as leaders. It's our responsibility to connect with people as humans, and Yeah, and not make it personal. And yeah, I love the term intellectual bully. There's a lot of that goes on. There's lots of bullying on all levels. But yeah, so thank you. I think that's a great answer. And
EQ trumps IQ.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I really do think that's the case. It should be more the case these days, and it is becoming more the case. But it's what we talked about earlier. You know, surrounding yourself with people who are better than you as well. In that sense, they might have better, different skills that they bring to the table. It doesn't necessarily mean everybody comes from the same intellectual perspective. So, Nick says you nailed it.
$20 coming your way. Scotland needs it.
So Philip Belcher has said, Scott, how much do you bring into your leadership from your heritage in New Zealand culture, which I find to be tell it like it is, work hard and have a laugh along the way?
Probably more than a lot of my Australian contemporaries like. Yeah, quite a lot. I mean, it does what it says on the tin, right? I come from backwater New Zealand. You know, if I can't not be who I am, I'm really fortunate that when you're in a position of leadership, you get to set the rules. And if you want to make it lighthearted humour, you know, people tend to laugh at you when you're the boss. So whether they're laughing at me or with me, it doesn't really matter. They're having a laugh. So yeah, I try and inject humour and keep things straight up. Yeah.
Awesome. It's interesting. I've just read or reread Legacy. I can't remember the author, but it was all about the All Blacks and how they form culture and team and how they've been so successful. And it's another frame of how you know. I mean, maybe it's just sporting generally, but New Zealanders seem to get it right, and they seem to have.
Yeah, no one likes tall poppies in New Zealand. In fact, almost to a fault.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful camaraderie, which is really, really cool. But accountability at the same time, which I like. Yeah. So we are coming towards the end. This has been fantastic. I think we've covered some amazing topics. Has anyone got any other questions or comments they'd like to add before I hit Scott with my final big question for the day? That's not that big. And I'm just going to wait and see if anyone responds to that. But I appreciate everybody being here. And I love the fact we've got so many great leaders on board today. Nobody's saying anything. We're all good. Philip says, way to go. People want authentic leaders and Kiwis do it so well. Yeah, absolutely. They do. All right. So one big question for you just to finish off. And thank you so much for all of the gold today. If you could only leave us with one thing, and so you had everything else was taken away, but you had one thing that you could leave with upcoming leaders or leaders as to your big tip, what would it be?
Look after yourself, because if you can't look after yourself, how can you be trusted to look after the interests of other people? And I mean it on many levels. You know, you keep fit, look after yourself intellectually and emotionally, and you'll always be in a much stronger position, and people will see it. That's it.
Yeah, I love it. That's a brilliant answer. You got to have that foundation. And you know, I've seen, I mean, unless you look after yourself, you can't be mentally strong, and you also can't, you know, decision making is more difficult. You just everything unravels.
If you're not looking out, no one's looking out for you in leadership positions. So if you can't sort your own shit and be disciplined, you're going to make it really hard. It's going to be really hard.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. So thank you so much, Scott. That's been a really great conversation. There are a few topics there that I would love to catch up with you later on and just drill down with you. And I will make that available to people in the program as we move forward. You know, today's been awesome. If just having some of the mentors that are involved in the program here today is phenomenal, and I will be pulling together a roundtable conversation very soon as well. Just saying, everybody who's on, if you're interested in coming along for the roundtable, I would love you to do a Zoom call with me. Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl loved the discussion and the sharing in every way. So appreciation to you. So thank you again. If anyone's interested in more information on the program that I'm talking about, where we're going to have all these amazing mentors involved in creating some extended content for you, and join the community where we'll be hanging out, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I shall provide more information next week. I'm just trying to think. I didn't check who I've got on next week. That's a little bit awkward, but I do have someone amazing on next week. I'll just be honest about that. I'll let everybody know on Monday who that's going to be. And in the meantime, have a wonderful day, and I will catch up with you all next week, same time. Thanks so much. I'm going to end our broadcast here.